I would like to introduce our wonderful guest artists and beekeeper, Nicolas Estevez and Dr. Luke Dixon. I'm sure many of you know the work of Nicolas, but in case you don't, he has been working with us now for over a year on some programs around Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. And last year he created a walk called The Tree and I, which in April we launched as an audio tour. So that if any of you are interested in experiencing that tour, either as a site-specific walk or one that you can just do anywhere, both of them are available on our website, cityisliving.lab.org. So you can download that from our Call Walks page, and it's a beautiful experience. So please take advantage of it. Nicolas, as many of you know, has created projects all over the world. Most of them, or many of them, are really grounded in ephemeral experiences and are very performative in nature. And increasingly, his work has become more and more collaborative with individuals and large groups of people. And one of his signature works, I think, which really illustrates how his work is very grounded in compassion and empathy, was a series that he did in several cities where he took over the jobs of minimum wage earners to give them a break. And I think that that's a beautiful illustration of sort of the core values of his work. Nicolas moved to New York City in 1994 from the Dominican Republic. Much of his time in New York has been spent in the Bronx. And as I said, he's worked all over the world and recently returned from making a project in Albion, Michigan, where he really did a collaboration with the entire citizenry of Albion, which is quite a remarkable feat. So Nicolas has an MFA from Tyler in Philadelphia and a master's from the Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Dr. Luke, who I've just met recently, but his reputation precedes him. He is an urban beekeeper and a theater director, and I'm sure that he weaves the two together and will today. He has he works as the beekeeper for the most highest altitude beehive in Europe, I understand, at the Canary Wharf, which is quite an accomplishment. And he is beekeeper in residence at the Natural History Museum in London. And I think one interesting point is he's working with a group of volunteers that are creating a pollinator corridor in railways in England, which I think is a really interesting idea. Luke also has authored 2 books on bees, Beekeeping in Towns and Cities, and Bees and Honey, Myth, Folklore, and Traditions. So thank you, Dr. Luke, and thank you, Nicolas, for this wonderful gift today. So before we proceed, I'd like to introduce Mary Miss, who's the founder of City is Living Laboratory, and talk a little bit about her vision and our mission.
Mary, you'll need to unmute yourself. Or let's see if I can do it.
I really appreciate having everybody here with us today. I started off about a decade ago trying to imagine how we could get more artists involved in addressing the many pressing issues of our times. And it wasn't just getting the artists' interests, it was really how to get policymakers and city people and government agencies to recognize the important role that the arts could have. We have so much going on around us now, and we think of City as Living Lab as call, and we feel like this is a time to call for change. Every little change that we can make is going to be so important, and I feel like this is one step today. So thank you both for being here to lead this, Luke and Nicolas, and thank you all for helping us make this happen. Welcome.
All right, so we'll turn the afternoon over to Nicolas.
Thank you, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? If you can, just nod. Very good. I'm very happy to be here. I thank Mary Mees Foundation, Colwalk, Olivia, Liza, and all of my teachers, some of whom are here today. Dr. Luke, Annie, Beth, and some of them are not here today, but I thank them as well. Linda, Mary Montano, thank you for all of your teachings and your love. I'm very moved by that. You have been a source of inspiration in what I do. Thank you. I thank you. So with that in mind, I would like to invite everyone to take a breath in through your nose and make a big sigh through your mouth. Breath in again through your nose and out through your mouth. And from here on, we will be breathing in through our nose and breathing out through our nose. And when we breathe in our stomach, it's meant to expand, just like a baby. When we breathe out, the stomach contracts. But please do not exert any pressure or tension, just breathing naturally, breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your nose. Stomach expanding when you breathe in, stomach contracting when you breathe out. And I must make a brief stop here to mention how lucky many of us are to be able to breathe, because we take air and water, just to name two elements, we take them for granted. And we say, well, we breathe, we drink, and yes, water seems to be more complicated than even air, because now we sell water. The earth is being sold in pieces, and water is being sold in bottles. But now we have seen that breathing is a privilege. When some people in our society in the 21st century cannot breathe. So let's just pause here and allow any emotions that may surface for you when you think about this privilege to emerge. Do not judge it, just be with it. And before we move on to our breathing exercises, I would like to say, may we all be able to breathe. No matter what our color is, the color of our skin, how much money we have, where we live, may all of us be able to breathe. So I would like to introduce you to some simple practices that I learned from two other teachers, Dr. Brown and Dr. Gerbar, and their BBM approach, breath, body, mind. These are very simple. So why don't we start with some exercises to release tension? There's so much tension in the air nowadays. So this is called half breath. And again, let's take a deep breath in through our nose and make a sigh. And again, breathe in and out. And I'm going, just watch what I'm doing. Keep breathing at your own pace. I'm going to bring my arms up straight, gently, and they're going to come down this way, and I'm going to make the sound ha. Breathing in, ha. And we do that faster. Let's do that for a minute or so. Ready? Breathing in, ha, 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 ha. One more time. Ha. And place your hands on your lap and close your eyes. And observe any changes in your body or any sensations. Observe your breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And I would like to invite you to do some tapping because that's going to help us release tension. And I'll have to figure out how to stand on my chair. You don't have to do that. I'll do that for the purpose of showing you. But if you are sitting and you can stand, you may push your chair to the side. If you can't stand for whatever reason, that's okay. You can do it on your chair the best you can. And I'm going to start tapping on the side. Both hands. Tapping on the other side on your rib cage. As I keep breathing in and out, tapping below your clavicle to release tension in your heart. Keep tapping there. There's a lot of tension that many of us are holding in our hearts. Tapping on the back of your shoulders with both hands. Tapping on one shoulder and extending one arm. Tapping there and extending the tapping very slowly all the way down to your hand. And then clapping. The same arm the other way and tapping from the hand all the way to the shoulder. And moving to the other shoulder. And tapping along your arm all the way down to your hand. Clapping. Doing the back of your arm. All the way up to the shoulder. Very good. And now doing your stomach. We tend to hold a lot of tension here too. This is a center of power and how we project ourselves out into the world. Very good. And then tapping, let me see if I can show you, tapping right here. And all the way down on the outside of your legs. All the way down to your feet, if you can. And the inside of your legs. When you get to the knees, tap on your lap. That's great. And then tapping your back, on your sacrum, tapping your kidneys, and tapping your rib cage. One side, the other side. Above your heart. Clapping. And closing your eyes. If you're standing, you may sit and close your eyes and observe any sensations or emotions arising for you. You may bask in the vibration that your body might be experiencing. The vibration that might resemble bees in movement. Very good. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. And we'll do one last breathing exercise because these two exercises are to release tension to energize the body. But before I hand the stage to Dr. Luke, I would like to leave you with a calming exercise. So we're going to place our hands on our lap, just gently. Breathe in through your nose and make a big sigh through your mouth. Oh. Again, breathe in through your nose, big sigh through your mouth. Oh. And my hands are going to move like a waterfall. This is called painting a waterfall. So I breathe in, my hands move up. I breathe out, my hands move down. Breathing in and breathing out very slowly. Breathing in, breathing out gently. Breathing in, imagine that our arms are the legs of the bees. Breathing out. Breathing in and out. In and out. Two more times, breathing in, out. And the last time, breathing in and out. Place your hands on your lap and you may close your eyes and observe any sensations. And whenever you're ready, no rush, you may open your eyes and Dr. Luke is going to be with us. No rush. Okay.
Nicolas, thank you. Thank you. And hello, everybody. How extraordinary. Sorry, I'm just slightly amazed that I'm here with all these faces all over the world on the screen. And it's a joy to work with Nicolas. We met some years ago in England, I think, wasn't it, Nicolas? And we were introduced on a project that Annie Sprinkle and Elizabeth Stevens were hosting with me in London, and they're here somewhere with us today. So the first of two things I'm going to do is I'm just going to read you a story. It's a very simple story. It's a story that I'm been working on with a beekeeping colleague of mine, Leslie. We're hoping it's going to be a picture book for children. So the pictures today you'll have to imagine in your head. And it's not quite a visualization because it's about the other senses, and it's about the story of a bee exiting the hive for the first time in her life. And so you're welcome to have your eyes closed while I read you this story and see what pictures you can conjure up in your head as I read it. If that's uncomfortable, then you're welcome to look at the screen and stare at me and the rest of the group. But I'm just going to very gently read you this story, and then we'll segue into some sounds of bees and the beehive. Once there was a bee. She was 3 weeks old, which for a bee is halfway through her life. She lived in the hive with her mother, the queen bee, and all her sisters. She had nearly 50,000 sisters. It was a big family. For 3 weeks, all her life, she had lived in the hive. It was dark in there, very dark. Too dark to see anything at all. All she could do was feel and smell. Every smell was important, and so was every touch. Now at last it was her time to leave the hive for the first time. She moved through the hive, walking across the waxed cells, past the sweet and sticky honey, past the new bees growing under their caps of wax, past the pollen stored there to feed the young larvae, until she came to the entrance of her home. As she went out for the first time, she felt the sun on her body. She felt the light on her 5 eyes. She flapped her wings and began to fly. Higher and higher she went, around and about the front of the hive, making circles in the air. She learnt where her hive was in the world, and she remembered what was around it so that she could find her way home. She learnt where the sun was in the sky and how it moved from moment to moment and hour to hour. And when she was ready, she flew off away across the fields to find food to bring back to the hive. For now, she was a flying bee. No longer did she have to do all the jobs inside the hive, the feeding of the young, looking after the queen, her mother, cleaning, making honey. Now she could fly and spend the rest of her life collecting sweet nectar from flowers to bring back to the hive to transform into honey, or collect dusty, brightly colored pollen to bring back in the bags on her back legs, tasty food for the young larvae that would one day become bees like her. And so she flew. She flew across fields, around trees, past buildings, by birds that eyed her as food for themselves, close to scary wasps that would sting and eat her if they could, until she came upon a field of lavender, green and purple in the afternoon sun. She packed the bags on her legs with pollen until they could not take a single speck more, and then she flew straight home the way she had come. Her flight was slower now, weighed down as she was with pollen. Sisters welcomed her as she reached the front of the hive. They unpacked her pollen. But before she flew away again, she went into the hive and she danced in the dark. She danced her waggle dance. In the darkness of the hive, the other bees could feel the patterns she had made as she danced. They couldn't see her, but they could feel her, and so they learned where she had been to find the pollen. And from the smell of it on her body, they knew what flowers the pollen had come from. The smell and touch of the bee inside the hive told her sisters where they too could go in search of pollen. Then she was off again, back to the lavender field. And she would keep returning there until there was no pollen left to bring home. And sisters would now join her and come to help, for she was a flying bee, free in the air and the sunlight, with the rest of her life before her. Nicolas.
Thank you, Luke, for this story. I feel that we depend so much on bees, and in my case, I know so very little about them. And that's one of the reasons for this conversation. It's the learning that's taking place and the sharing. Thank you very much. For the purpose of these exercises and this brief meditation that I'm going to do, I'll be using very simple terms. So I very much I think it was Judith who really highlighted that the stomach is not the abdomen. As I said, for the purpose of these exercises, I would refer to the stomach, although it's not the same as the abdomen, because people tend to, when you say to people, point to your stomach, everybody knows more or less that it's this part of the body right here. And the same thing when I ask people to breathe in as opposed to inhale. And so I'll be simplifying things. So my apologies if they're too simple, but I just want to make sure that everybody can comprehend them and that I don't get into technical, don't have to get into technical explanations. So thank you so much again, Judith, for that, for raising that comment and clarifying. So I would like to share some audio. So that was shared with me by Luke. So you'll have to regulate the sound in your computer. This might be too loud for you or too low. So play with that. And give me a second while I share the screen. While I share the audio, I mean. Just 1 second. Share. Okay, got it. And then from the audio, I'm going to lead you into a brief meditation. So why don't we do that before we even hear the audio? If you're sitting down, make sure that your feet are touching the ground, the earth, no matter where you are. You could be on a 50th floor in Manhattan, or maybe on a 60th floor in Hong Kong. You could be on the ground. I am on the ground. I'm in the Bronx at a ground level, so I can see the trees and plants. Allow gravity to pull you down in a gentle way, so feet on the ground. Allow your spine to be erect, but not tense. Hands on your lap. And let's take a deep breath in and make a big sigh through the mouth. And another deep breath in and make a big sigh through the mouth. And you may lower your gaze down to the floor. You may look at a wall with a soft gaze, or you may close your eyes if you feel comfortable. And we're going to breathe in gently and breathe out softly. You're going to do that on your own. Relaxing the muscles of your forehead. Relaxing your eyelids. Relaxing your cheeks. Your jaw is relaxed. Your shoulders are down. Your arms are relaxed. And so are your hands and your fingers. Your chest is relaxed. Your stomach is relaxed. Now relax the part of your body where your legs meet your pelvis. Relax your legs, your knees. Relax your lower legs. The top of your feet. Relax the bottom of your feet. Let's immerse ourselves in the sound of the bees, the sounds of the birds. For a minute or so. Eventually, these sounds will dissipate and you will only hear my voice. We're going to imagine ourselves as bees. Imagine yourself as a bee. On a sunny day, wherever you are. Imagine yourself waking up and moving your wings and opening your 5 eyes. of all the eyes that bees have. Imagine yourself grooming your paws, your legs. Bees have legs, very delicate legs. And getting ready for the day. You picture a garden, a beautiful garden. And in that garden, there's a gorgeous flower. Make that flower your own. It could be an orchid. It could be a lily. It could be a clematis. It could be a daffodil. And imagine that flower as being an organ in your body, in your bee body, that might be giving you trouble, that you might be questioning, that might be questioning you, that might be asking you to stop, an organ that you might be having issues with. Whether it's the liver, the heart. And now that organ is outside of you in a garden, probably much bigger than you are, because you are a tiny bee. Fly around that organ, that flower organ. You may look at it from afar, investigating its colors, textures, lightness, or solidity. Fly around it and get to know that organ that you have never seen outside your body. Say hello to it whatever way you can in bee language, with your legs, rubbing. And when you are brave enough or courageous enough or ready, you can come closer to that organ and closer. And eventually land on it, just very gently land on that organ flower. You may smell its fragrance, its perfume. You may touch it with your legs. You may tickle that organ and make it laugh. And if it laughs, you might smile at it. You might tickle it some more and create some vibration. Your legs are very small, but they have great power. So you might massage that organ in different parts with your tiny, tiny legs and your touch. You might kiss that organ. You might give it a gentle, very gentle sting if that's what that organ needs. Just very gentle, like a pinch. You may bring your ear close to that organ and listen to what it has to tell you. You may massage the organ a little bit more and tell it that you will be flying away again in a few seconds. And before you do that, fly away completely. You may fly to a flower in the same garden, another flower, and gather some nectar, some pollen, and bring it to that organ and nurture it. Here it is, some pollen, some honey, some nectar, whatever you have in your pulse. This is for you. This is for you. And start flying out, flying back away from the organ, little by little, watching it from above. And you see from above how the organ becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and tiny, bee-sized. And how that restored organ, that happy organ, perhaps not perfect, but restored in some way, flies to you like a bee flies to you and very gently gets inside your bee body. And now the two of you are one. And you feel it. And you accommodate that organ back in your bee body. And now the organ tickles you and you smile. And the two of you fly away into new flowers, into new nectars, into your beehive, into your community, back into this beehive, this digital beehive, this community. And no rush. Whenever you're ready, you might move your toes. You may become aware of your ankles. You become aware of the area behind your knees. Become aware of your fingers and your hands, your stomach. Become aware of the area where the legs meet your pelvis. Become aware of your chest. And the area around your heart. Become aware of your shoulders, your neck, your jaw. Become aware of your cheeks, your eyelids, your head. And become aware of your whole body, your entire body, and the space it occupies in the room. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes very slowly. And Luke will be here with us.
Nicolas, thank you. So I'm going to just take us on a very quick tour around the world to see the way in which bees and man have lived together for millennia and the way in which bees and people live together today. Maybe one of these bees is the bee in the story, because in the wild, as you heard,
Luke,
bees
you're
live in dark
muted.
voids. Oh, I'm sorry.
You should be unmuted, Luke.
So
Yeah.
Luke will be unmuting himself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Did you hear any of that? Or was I just talking into a void?
I think we heard most of it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry then. So they're creatures of the dark, and the queen is the deepest, darkest of all in the hive. And there are tens of thousands of workers around her communicating, not by sight as you heard, but by smell, a complexity of pheromones that tell the colony all they need to know and control all they do. And here you can see the bees living deep inside the hive on the honeycomb they make. And bees have been on our planet for something like 130 million years, as long as the first flowering plants. And flowering plants are dependent on flying insects for pollination, and flying insects are dependent on nectar and pollen in the flowers for food. So the two must have evolved side by side. And it's one of the mysteries of creation, that we don't know whether there was a bee one day and then a flower, or a flower one day and then a bee, and how they evolved together. And it was a long, long time before humans came along. And for most of those 130 million years, bees lived without humans stealing their honey. But the first hominoids, that's the first Homo species, came along about 2.5 million years ago. Homo sapiens about 160,000 years ago. And as soon as men and women came along, they started doing what this woman is doing. And this is the oldest image we have of someone taking honey from a beehive. This is in Valencia in Spain in a cave. And it's a woman putting her arm into a tree. You can see the bees around her and taking the honey. And we think this is an older image. It's an image in southern Africa of humans doing the same by trees collecting honey. And there are images like this one from from a tomb in ancient Egypt. This is about 650 BC of ancient Egyptians who constructed hives out of clay. I don't think the bees are actually to scale here. And in the Middle East, clay hives like this are still used with the bees busy working away inside. And in Europe, they began to develop hives made out of straw. They were called skeps. They're a bit like upside down waste paper baskets with a small hole for the bees to come in and out of. And they're still made all over Europe with different designs based on the materials that are to hand, just created from straw or reeds or whatever there is around. The disadvantage of these hives for centuries was that you had to destroy the bees to extract the wax and honey. But now with modern hives, which we've had for 200 years, hives like this, all over the world, on cities and in gardens and in parks and on rooftops, there are people keeping bees like this one on the National Theatre in London, this one of ours at the Tower of London, these, which were some of the first hives I looked after on a hotel, where the kitchen in the hotel now has 8 hives that they use for honey for the restaurant. People keep them on office roofs, like this one, where there's a whole orchard on the top of a lawyer's building. And across the world, this is on the roof of the Opera House in Paris, where one of the stage technicians keeps his bees on the roof. And this is an amateur beekeeper who keeps his on the roof of the President's Palace in Berlin. This is Hong Kong, proof that even in the most congested and urban of spaces, you can still keep bees. And they put little offerings, you can just see them in front of the hive when new bees are introduced to a space. And closer to home for some of you, this is a school in New York that overlooks Central Park. And you may know that for many years it was illegal to keep bees in New York. It's only about 10 years ago that it was legalized. So before that, there were guerrilla beekeepers all over the city, quietly and discreetly and secretly keeping their hives on rooftops. But as the years have gone by, in the last 10, 15 years particularly, we've become really aware of how important bees are to us as humans, how we live together symbiotically, and how we couldn't survive as a species without them, but they could easily survive as a species without us, as they had done for 130 million years. And so educating young people like this girl who's just housing her bees in their new home, and younger people where we do workshops with children like this one we did recently, it's very, very important to make us all aware just how important not only bees, but all of the ecosystem, that we are just one small creature, a part of an ecosystem with all of these other creatures, of which in many ways bees are perhaps the most important. And they're important because of what they do inside the hive. Here they are in the hive, and here they are, take that one back, they're building wax comb. And the wax comes in little strips out of their abdomen, not out of their stomach. And the distinction for a bee is quite important, because a bee has an abdomen and little slices of wax come out like out of a pasta machine, and then they're passed to the other bees around who mold them into this beautiful shape. And the bees have 2 stomachs. They have a digestive stomach, the same way we do, and then they have a honey stomach that they carry nectar in, and they regurgitate the nectar into the hive, and they turn it, as these bees are doing here, into honey. And when they've evaporated the water out of the nectar and turned it into honey and added the enzymes from their stomach in as well, they put a little wax cap on it, as you can see here. and its honey stored for the winter. And the wax and the honey have been central to the development of human life since time began. And until the whaling industry, it was wax candles that lit the great buildings and churches and places of worship that humans built for themselves. And it was honey that was the sweetener to sweeten the food. And honeybees collect nectar from 4 million flowers to make 1 kilo of honey. And a bee must fly 150,000 kilometers, 3 times around the world, to make 1 jar of honey. And the average bee in her lifetime will only make 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. And they visit between 50 and 100 flowers during a single trip out of the hive. And they can fly for up to 5 miles at 20 miles an hour as they travel, with their honeybee wings beating at over 11,000 times a minute. And working with them and working beside them and helping them and giving them homes and keeping them healthy and working symbiotically with them, we can take a little bit of honey from the hives at the end of the year and take it for ourselves over the winter. And here we are at a pub in South London where the pub grows its produce on the roof, and the hive of bees there pollinate all of that produce to provide food for the pub. And one day, the noted ecosexuals Annie Sprinkle and Beth Stevens climbed the stairs to the roof of that pub. And this is them. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to hand you over for one last exercise, I think.